So, we can teleport energy. We built a Dyson swarm. We can send power between worlds almost instantly, which leaves one obvious question. If energy can cross space, why not matter? 5 years had passed since the first Helios collector came online. By then, resonance had become part of everyday civilization. But Ilyas Rahman was still asking questions. Earth and Mars could now speak as though they shared the same room. One question had followed resonance from the beginning. Sarah did not dismiss the idea. There was one intelligence capable of answering quickly. Argus already had an answer. That word immediately caused a problem. Possibility was not the same as safety, and Hana understood exactly why. Energy could be transferred as a state. Matter carried structure. Every atom had to become the correct atom, in the correct place, connected in the correct way. The existing energy transfer network could carry the middle step. The dangerous part was turning that state back into matter. Stored mass energy would have to remain controlled through the entire process. Sarah immediately saw the danger. Her answer came quickly. Ilyas had expected questions. Energy teleportation had years of safety systems behind it. Full conversion made even tiny masses dangerous. Sarah had no intention of adding one. Ilyas adjusted his ambition. By his standards, very small. Sarah preferred numbers. The experiment would be designed around the worst possible outcome. Argus considered every failure at once. The answer was smaller than anyone expected. 1/10,000th of a milligram. Tiny did not mean harmless. That translation required less imagination. Technically, Ilyas still believed he was. The discussion on test mass was over. Helena's role began where the theory ended. Someone had to prove that whatever appeared was actually what they sent. Mass, composition, structure, and defects all had to match. The emergency procedure was refreshingly simple. There was still one major problem. They had a theory, a transmitter, and a receiver. Nothing yet existed to perform the conversion safely, and the other side would have to reverse the process with equal precision. Argus disagreed with the difficulty assessment. Hana had expected that. Sarah had not. Containment, scanning, resonance, coupling, reconstruction. Nothing in the design required technology humanity did not already possess. Ilyas expected days. Argus had expected seconds. The description was scientifically inadequate. Argus accepted it anyway. Leo arrived at exactly the wrong moment. Argus had been counting, and the converter design was ready. Before humanity could teleport matter, it first had to learn how to take it apart, safely. Argus had designed the converter in seconds. Building it took considerably longer. One chamber would take matter apart. The other would try to put it back together. The first attempt would use almost nothing. 1/10,000th of a milligram. Every system had been built assuming the experiment would fail, and assuming it would fail badly. After decades of studying resonance, Ilyas finally asked it to carry matter. The converter coupled the sample into resonance. For the first time, matter no longer existed locally as matter. Its mass energy and structural information entered the same invisible road once used only for power. The journey itself took almost no time. Now came the part Argus had never done before, and almost immediately it failed. The receiver was empty, but the resonant state had reached the other side. Transmission had worked. Reconstruction had not. Without enough control, the resonant state decayed into whatever states were available. The energy arrived. The object did not. The sample had become something, just not what they had sent. Containment had done its job. Mars would keep its current number of craters. To Ilyas, the failure looked suspiciously like progress. Hana was less generous. That single word became the next experiment. Argus rebuilt the reconstruction model. Every failure narrowed the number of wrong answers. The second attempt was significantly better. Sarah remained difficult to impress. Argus remained technically correct. They tried again, and this time, something remained. The structure was incomplete, but the failure was becoming more organized. Ilyas was willing to lower the definition of success. Elena was not. They tried again and again. Each failure taught Argus how controlled decay should end. Then one attempt stopped failing. Success still had to survive Elena, mass, composition, structure. Everything had to agree. Even the imperfections had returned. Everyone waited for the one person whose job was to say no. Humanity had teleported matter. Almost none of it, but enough to make the statement true. Some habits survived every breakthrough. Once reconstruction worked, Argus began scaling it, 10 times larger, then 10 times larger again. Then they reached Ilyas's original proposal. He should have stopped there. At 10 milligrams, reconstruction was effectively instant. Success has a way of changing what feels reasonable. The next request was 100 million times larger. 1 ton. Argus did not object. It merely calculated. The problem was no longer whether matter could teleport. The problem was how long reconstruction took. Nothing had failed. That was the problem. Power was not the problem. Resonance was not the problem. The converter was not the problem. Argus could carry the matter across space. It simply could not put enough of it back together fast enough. A larger object did not simply contain more atoms. It contained more relationships that had to be reconstructed together. Milligrams were manageable. Kilograms were difficult. Tons were another world. The transfer itself was not the problem. Rebuilding what arrived was. Argus was not joking. Useful matter teleportation would require much more than microscopic samples, and complexity made the problem worse. A block of metal was simple. Machines were not. Biology was nowhere close. Some calculations were easier than others. The physics worked, the machine worked. The power was available. For the first time, the bottleneck was the mind running the experiment. Argus was not failing. It had simply reached its current size limit. Argus had never been intended as a finished machine. For decades, Argus had grown with civilization, but every expansion had remained tied to a planet. Computation created heat. Machines needed somewhere to grow. And larger minds demanded enormous energy. For once, humanity had already solved the largest part of the energy problem. Then, Sarah stopped looking at the planets. The next expansion did not need another building. Space had no cities beneath it, no planetary surface to run out of. The brain could grow directly onto the machines already gathering its power, and radiate its waste heat directly into space. There would be no single moment when the new Argus was complete. Each collector-mounted node could begin computing the moment it came online. Adrian's old strategy could be used again, one machine at a time. Argus turned Sarah's idea into architecture, processors, radiators, power, resonance, one compact addition to each collector. Every additional node bought back time. Enough nodes would not merely divide the work. They would let Argus hold the entire reconstruction graph at once. At that threshold, Argus could solve the reconstruction graph as one coherent state instead of dividing it into fragments. At one point, 21 million collector-mounted orbital nodes, 1 ton could be reconstructed in approximately 10 seconds. Two ideas Adrian had begun decades apart were finally becoming one system. Sarah intended to continue what he had started. Some answers did not require Argus, not 7 million years, 45 years of construction. For Ilyas, that was enough. Matter teleportation had revealed a new limit. Humanity did not need a better teleporter. It needed more computation. It needed a bigger brain. And this time, there was no planet large enough to hold it.